Hi there, and welcome to the CyberHut's Vendor Introduction series, where I get to interview leading identity security startups around all the globe to understand a little bit more about their mission and vision to solve some of today's vital and important problems. My name is Simon Moffat. I'm founder at the CyberHut, and with me is Ashish from Andromeda. Ashish, welcome.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for the opportunity. Excited.
Not at all. No, I appreciate how busy it is and how difficult it is, building these startups to really change the world that we live in. So I appreciate a little bit of your time to do this. And the way this works, for those who have not seen one of these little episodes before, is I get to ask our esteemed guest three very, very important questions just to understand a little bit more about how Ashish is thinking and how Andromeda are going to tackle some of today's problems. And we always start off with the same question, essentially, which is, what is the problem that you guys are trying to solve?
Well, we are solving the identity security problem. As I think we all know, it's become the primary attack vector today. And despite all our focus on better authentication with MFA and passwordless, 70 to 80% of breaches involve identities, human and non-human, social engineering, lateral movement, insider threats, etc. That makes authorization or entitlements the biggest problem of identity security. And that's what we focus on, because the entitlements, the breadth of entitlements define the attack surface. The primary reason we have this today is because of manual provisioning. We take on the on-prem version of provisioning and apply it to cloud. And that's what's resulted in excessive privilege. And I think if you go one step down, the other problem is in addition to this manual processing falling short, is the identity data is fragmented across the enterprise. You have data in your IDPs and your clouds and your applications, other tools, and then different tools focus on different siloed aspects of the identity. I think that's a challenge we want to address, because we think that the lack of end-to-end context that's required to automate identity operations and then derive the right kind of least privilege and other operations automatically, I think is the best way to solve it. So that's a problem we're trying to solve, Simon.
Love that. I think it's a vital thing, isn't it? I think as you say, we've sort of, as an industry, we've spent a lot of time on this sort of authentication thing, biometrics, MFA, passkeys, whatever, and that's absolutely, it's essential, and we need to do it. I still don't think that's solved ultimately, but you're right. It's what happens next. What happens with access control, entitlements, permissions, sessions, and all of that sort of downstream security landscape. And it's a complicated thing, isn't it? I think it's a difficult one to do. And that sort of, I guess that leads me into the next thing, really, around why is this a problem? And I think some parts of our identity worlds are maturing. I think we are getting really good at some things, of course, but we have more identity types. You briefly mentioned NHIs there. We have employees, we have customers, we have machines, workloads, these AI things everywhere. Is it just we have more stuff, more identities, or is it, as you mentioned there, the cloud legacy technologies? Why is this suddenly becoming a big issue today?
I think it's a combination of everything you mentioned and our favorite word, AI. So I think it's a combination of all of them, right? It is an explosion of identities, especially non-human, as you talked about. It is larger adoption of cloud and automation, which is actually driving the NHI. It is also the manual processes that have finally caught up and are biting us, where like cloud has 15, 20,000 fine-grained permissions for the right reasons so that it can do effective least privilege. But you combine that with manual processes, it doesn't work, right? So that's the reason. And the reason we are sticking to manual processes today is, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have centralized data of all identity to be able to make those context and behavioral decisions so that we can intelligently automate. So I think that's where we still have that problem. And finally, AI is worsening the problem, or making the problem worse, because you have sophisticated attacks now, and anybody can actually create a more sophisticated attack than before with Gen AI and with more sophisticated AI. So while AI can help us, and we're using AI to help us mitigate and prevent those breaches and also do better identity decisions. But I think AI is also making breaches more severe and more frequent. So I think it's a combination of, again, more identities, manual processes, lack of centralized data, and more AI driven attacks. That's why it's urgent now.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. AI, it is everywhere. It's omnipresent, and I think in the long term, the benefits are huge. Obviously, it's not going anywhere, is it? Let's be honest. But I think absolutely agree. I think there's definitely this asymmetric problem currently where the bad guys don't have to worry about provisioning cost or compliance or infrastructure change management. They just can click, and they can be very, very powerful with very little, I guess, investment there. So I think that is a big one. And I think as well, you mentioned identity data there. I think this is a really overlooked problem because ultimately we do a bit on authentication, we do a bit on maybe verification, but then as soon as it comes to the identity data aspect for people and for workloads, it's sort of just forgotten about. It's siloed, maybe resource specific. Do some retrospective access reviews. I don't really think access reviews are happening really in the workload space at all. So it's a really sort of it's a complex problem to deal with, and I think it's one which it's tackled a little bit, but I think it's only becoming. I think it's becoming worse. I think is my comment on that one. All right, so we've got this data thing. We've got entitlements is the issue. We've got authorization both for people and NHIs is getting bigger. And I think you're right. The impact seems to be getting bigger, which I guess then segues into the sort of final question. Ultimately, is why are you guys best placed? What have you seen and built and heard which can really sort of tackle some of these things we've been talking about?
Yeah, definitely. So I think I'll answer this in a couple of different parts. The first is technology. So as we said, right, it's a data problem. So we're taking a fundamentally different, innovative architectural approach, because to solve this hard problem, you have to rethink how you solve the problem, not in silos, but by building a centralized data lake of our identities into a graph-based database where you inject not just configurations and entitlements, but more importantly, activity data, because that activity data allows you to now build behavioral analysis and models and look for anomalies. So what we do is we ingest all data from all identity providers, cloud applications, ITSM tools, including activity logs into a single data lake, and then run machine learning models, AI models, from risk calculation to behavioral anomaly detection to peer analysis, to ultimately automate your day-to-day operations in an intelligent fashion, in a context and behavioral based fashion. That's what allows you to give you both security and agility. To give you an example, least privilege has been the holy grail, right? Zero trust or zero standing privilege. I think it's impractical. I think we can get there, but what we think is the right way to do this is you should have standing privileges that are frequently used and low risk. So it's risk-based and usage-based. How do you do that by hand? You can't. You have to automatically derive it by analyzing every identity's data and risk, and then customizing for every identity automatically. Similarly, just-in-time access. Today there are lots of JIT tools, but they are workflows. Just like user access reviews or workflows and rubber stamps, just-in-time access tools are pretty much the same. We do it differently. What we do is when a just-in-time request comes in, our platform is going to analyze it. Andromeda is going to analyze it and say, has Simon requested this before? How often? From what location? For what devices? Does everything look good? Then don't ask anybody who's going to rubber stamp it anyways. Andromeda knows it better and approve it automatically, provision it, deprovision after 3 hours. Go for the speed without compromising security. On the flip side, if it is different, you have never done it before, you're suddenly in Japan, you've never been there, and you're accessing the role, maybe it's a compromised identity, maybe not. Now you ask somebody to review it, tell them what to look for so they can make a more informed decision. That's the difference. Same thing happens about compliance. Make user access reviews more contextful. Don't ask a rubber stamp, just tell them what looks different and approve automatically everything else. That's how we're thinking about it, right? So that's the technology part of it, Simon. The second is the team part of it. This is the team that most of us have worked with each other for 15, 20 years, build scalable architectures to solve hard challenges. We also have on our founding team is somebody who's run public cloud and private cloud at a large financial services companies and been an advisory board of large public cloud. So we believe that we have the right team to solve this hard problem in a fundamentally different, innovative architectural fashion, and has built enterprise solutions before for large enterprises. So those are the reasons why we feel confident.
Love that. It's that's great. You know, I think it's really a really deep, thought out way of thinking about, as you say, a complex problem, and it's a problem which has been around for 2 or 3 decades. Really, you know, how to manage the access, the review aspect. And it's saying, look, let's not try and sort of rehash what's gone before. But I think there's some really nice things I jotted down. Things like the activity analysis. You know, instead of just saying let's try and review all of the access that somebody had, shortcut that, because that's a really hard problem. If I'm honest, it's never been solved. I was doing that 20 years ago, and it's still a problem. So
Yes.
shortcut this and look at activity. Has these permissions being used? Peer analysis, another good one there. And things like graph as well, like that. Using and trying to model things differently, tackling a complex problem in a different way. And I think it sounds like you've really thought about it, really understood what this landscape looks like. And I think you know, you sound like you've got the experience to do so. You've got less grey hair than me, so that's always good. But you're right, it is a complex problem, and I think it's a problem which is only going to get bigger in the impact of it. If you get it wrong, it's going to get bigger. So I think that's absolutely super to hear. So Ashish, thanks for taking a bit of time out. I think this is an exciting journey you guys are on, and I think many of our sort of viewers and listeners will attest to wanting to know more, wanting to understand how this can help them. So thank you for taking a bit of time out of your busy day. Thank you for everybody watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Simon. Appreciate it. Cheers.